Very important medical disclaimer. Information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only and does not substitute for professional medical advice. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition or treatment before undertaking a new health regimen. Welcome to the Holistic Health Explained podcast. I'm your host, Shantae Fox, and my guest for today's episode is Andrea Twitchell, owner of The Medicine Way, a Native American nonprofit organization in Tempe, Arizona. She offers an integrative approach to whole health by supporting community members from an indigenous and clinical perspective and how to live a balanced lifestyle. Andrea holds a dual master's degree in clinical counseling and art therapy from Southwestern College, Santa Fe, New Mexico, and has over 17 years of hands-on continuing education experience in the field of therapeutic massage and somatic polarity therapy. She has extensive knowledge of anatomy and physiology and is deeply connected and attuned to the subtle energetic fields of the body. Since 2019, Andrea has been mentoring and healing with various plant medicines, stepping into the role as a medicine carrier. She operates on the spectrum of food as medicine for everyday healing, to various herbs and plants like cannabis and hape, to psychedelics, and this is actually the topic that we're going to explore today. Welcome to the show, Andrea.
Yay, thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. I am really intrigued about our topic today, so I can't wait to learn more about plant medicine. But before we do, I'm going to ask you my icebreaker question that I get to ask all of my guests. So I hope you thought of a fun little answer. But will you please share with us a fun fact or something that not many people may know about you?
I was definitely pondering on that the past couple days, and I don't know if it's fun. Maybe I'm a little boring. But I feel like one interesting thing about myself is I was born and raised on the Navajo Reservation. If you know where that is, it's located in New Mexico, Arizona, and Utah, and
Okay.
it's really dry and desert, right?
Right.
But my mom ended up with a pretty high level position in Washington, D.C., and we moved there when I was about 10 years old. And unbeknownst to me, my stepdad had some really big plans for us, and we ended up moving onto a 57-foot Chris Craft wooden yacht and lived on this
Wow.
boat for about 6, 7 years throughout my
That's pretty
teenage
cool.
years. And it was very interesting living on the water there on the Potomac, right down the
Wow.
street from Washington, D.C. So that might be something new that maybe most people don't know about me.
That is pretty interesting, I would say. That's pretty cool. Not a lot of people can say that about themselves, I'm sure. Yeah, how was that bringing like friends home? Did you ever get to bring people over to come play and hang out on the big yacht?
Yeah, I did. Always had little sleepovers and this and that, and a couple times taking friends out onto the Potomac River.
Okay.
Uh-huh. It's a whole nother lifestyle being a part of this yachting community, and actually, yeah, it was a very intimate community that my sister and I grew up in, and I love the opportunity to have these really diverse worldviews. I'm very
Yeah. That's
grateful.
awesome. Thank you for sharing
Mhm.
that.
Thanks.
All right, so we'll get into our topic today. You offer quite an array of services ranging from physical work on the body through therapeutic massage, right, to other various therapy modalities for the mind, such as eco psychology and psycho spirituality. How did your work as a massage therapist lead you to explore plant medicine and step into the role as a medicine carrier? And what is a medicine carrier?
Yeah, those are all a lot of really amazing questions that I could probably talk for like an hour about just those things. But real briefly, I would say I'm very grateful to have been raised within my Diné Navajo culture, and that um, my mother and grandfather took us to traditional healing ceremonies with our medicine men. So I grew up attending our traditional lifeway ceremonies and
Mhm.
really over time began to understand what Hajon means to live in balance and harmony. And as my third eye was opening and I was awakening around the age of 25, that's really
Okay.
where plant medicine came into my awareness. And I started reading a lot of books, particularly with Carlos Castaneda, The Teachings of Don Juan. And I
Mm.
read, he's got about like, I don't know if it's 8 or 9, 10 books in a series. And I read those books, and it was part of a spiritual community with my younger sister where we would talk about a lot of deep spiritual concepts, including plant medicines that Carlos Castaneda was bringing up in this book, such as mushrooms, Jimson weed, and things like that. So
Okay.
that's really where my first awareness around plant medicine first came into my life.
Okay.
And that was around the age of 25 when I was really starting to wake up. Then I really felt a real pull and tug. And like I mentioned, I ended up being raised in the DC area, and I was still in the DC area around this age. And my family being all here in the Southwest, I felt a
Mhm.
call to come back home and to bring my son home with me and to make some really big lifestyle changes for
Okay.
myself. I really felt that pull, and that pull landed me in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I
Mm.
ended up going to bodywork school in Santa Fe, New Mexico, at a very beautiful school that actually is no longer there. Super sad. But when I went into massage school, and actually it was a dual program where I also got certified in somatic polarity therapy, this whole world opened up about the mind body connection
Mm.
that, where it came in was I had this actually, she was a psychotherapist and she was one of our teachers, and we were talking about trauma and the body. And that's where the work started to come in about the body holding on to trauma. So that's where
Okay.
psychology started to come in. I was doing massage for quite a few years, and I always wanted to go back to school and get my actual degree, just a thing that I know I wanted to accomplish for
Right.
myself. So I ended up enrolling at the University of New Mexico. I double majored in psychology and anthropology, actually minoring in art.
Mm.
And I was going through quite a bit of trauma with my partner at that time, and actually 20 years of trauma with my partner at that time. A lot
Okay.
of um, mental, emotional abuse, sometimes physical abuse, and then there was a lineage of substance abuse.
Okay.
And at this time, while I was kind of really going through my undergrad program, it's really school that kind of saved me from trauma that I was experiencing. My partner actually became a heroin addict.
Mm.
My son was in high school at this time. It started kind of like in middle school and went through high school that we were dealing with this
Okay.
really family trauma. And I
Yeah.
started seeing a psychotherapist.
Okay.
And I looked at the plaque on her wall to see, because we were doing really profound work together.
Mm.
And the school happened to be Southwestern College in Santa Fe, New
Okay.
Mexico again. And I wasn't planning on going to graduate school at all. I just wanted to finish raising my son. I just wanted to get through my college program. I was in survival mode,
Right.
you
Right.
know. But Spirit has other plans, as I see
Often
things
does.
now. Uh-huh. And next thing I know, I was sitting there at orientation in the fall in this dual program that just seemed so effortless to get into this master's program. I just barely even remember applying. I just remember kind of like being shocked that I was sitting in this amazing conscious centered school, and to kind of, I guess, honor my sister again, who I actually honor her as my first medicine teacher. My youngest sister, her and I actually ended up we're in the same cohort in the same graduate program. So
Nice.
she too
Awesome.
also has her dual's master's degree as well.
Okay.
So with all that being said, um, I was, despite all the education and all the body knowing and wisdom in my own healing personal journey, I was struggling, especially with interpersonal relationships, a lot of conflict in my life. And it was
Mm.
really creating a lot of shame and discord internally. And it was showing up as a lot of self abuse. And that
Okay.
self abuse was looking like alcohol, codependent relationships,
Mhm.
abusive relationships. Um, Yeah, really just not operating at my fullest and highest potential, and I know
Right.
that because that was actually been part of the cycle, has been, like, these patterns of just, betraying myself and then going through these cycles of shame and then pulling myself up out of these cycles and
Mhm.
doing really great for a long time and then kind of going through another cycle of that again, and
Right.
I moved here to the Phoenix area about 2017, and right after I graduated from graduate school, my son's father, who was the heroin addict, had passed in 2016
Mhm.
again. A major devastation. He wasn't using at the time. It wasn't an overdose. It was just something really random,
Wow.
a heart condition, a heart
Wow.
failure. It
Okay.
was, yeah. So people always like to have clarity in that they like to assume
Yes.
that there was an overdose, but
Right.
at this time it wasn't. So I was going through a lot, and I was really abusing myself a lot. And despite all the training, the education, the self help books, the going to
Mhm.
yoga and that and
Yes.
I
Yes.
was at this ceiling. I was just hitting the ceiling of like, why can't I make these shifts that I know that I can make for myself? It's right here. I know it can happen.
Mm.
Why do I keep really maybe like failing myself is what it feels like, you
I'm
know?
sure a lot of people go through these
Mhm.
same questions and same
Mhm.
cycle.
Yep. And then in the new year of 2019, I decided to do something different, and that's when I landed into a breathwork, Hape class.
Okay.
And that's really where my psychedelic journey began.
Okay.
Mhm.
Awesome. Okay. So how can you explain to us what the term medicine carrier means?
Yeah, I think for different cultures, different societies, medicine carrier can mean different things. I prefer to use the term medicine carrier um, as opposed to like shaman.
Okay.
I think the word shaman is being overexploited, and a lot
Mm,
of people are over identifying with this term
mhm.
that isn't really actually culturally appropriate to their own lineage
Right.
and or have they actually really gone through initiations and mentorship, apprenticeship?
Mm,
What does that really look like when you consider yourself a medicine carrier or wisdom keeper? And most people now in the broad culture are calling us shamans, right? And I
right.
like to educate people that the word shaman comes from Siberia, and
Mm,
those are those medicine people. They are called shaman from
okay.
Siberia. And so for Navajos, we have a different word for our medicine people, right? But I prefer the term medicine carrier in that I truly believe, and I know this for all of us, that we all have our own wisdom.
Right.
We all carry our own medicine, but
Hmm.
sometimes that can be really clouded and not clear in what that medicine is. Um, but that's where we seek mentorship, guidance, and helping to kind of clear out the debris so that we can get really clear about who we really are as true spiritual entities and beings.
Okay.
Hmm.
Awesome. I love that
Yeah,
clarification.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that can be a little tricky, and I definitely like clarity around what that really means to be a shaman or a medicine man or woman. Yeah,
Yeah, I
thank
know
you.
that I've heard all of those terms extensively. Like you said, it's, really becoming kind of this mainstream, term that people are probably
Mhm.
misusing and overusing. But before I met you, I actually had never heard of the term hape, which is also known as rape, right? Am I
Mhm.
correct in how I'm saying that?
Yep.
Okay, so from my research that I've done to prepare for our interview, my understanding is that hape is more of a cleansing and grounding tool that works with the body's energy, while psychedelics on the other end are create a more profound alteration in your consciousness and perception for deeper healing. Would that kind of be
Yeah.
a good short summary?
That's a really good
Okay,
summary.
cool.
Yeah, I really love that. Exactly. Yes. So Hape, also known as Rape, is not a psychoactive medicine. This medicine comes from the Amazon jungle, has been used in indigenous tribes from the Amazon for thousands of years,
Mm,
and it is finely ground tobacco ash that is like finely ground down once it's burned down to an ash. But it's not just tobacco. It can be various plants that are also medicinal, used throughout the Amazon. So even right now, I have a rose hape, a mint hape. So as long as some of and the diversity, the biodiversity in the Amazon is just so incredible that it's just even amazing to know that they've been holding on and like tending to these medicines for thousands and thousands of years for us. And I give a lot of gratitude for my brothers and sisters in South and Central America for holding on to the wisdom of their ancestors to help a lot of us come back to ourselves, come back to home and to our own inner wisdom and knowing. So the hape, it's a finely ground tobacco ash, and it's a snuff. So it's blown into the sinus cavity. And that's where people can find that is very challenging. That this really fine powder is blown into the sinus cavity. And the way it can be used and the way I use it is to help move and clear energy. So we can have blocks in our energy that maybe we've picked up from other people, we've picked up from other environments, even maybe just our own negative thinking and thoughts, can create these blocks. And the hape is so powerful in its delivery that it really stops us in our tracks, helps us to connect to our breath, which is a part of activating the vagus nerve. And the vagus nerve is what also engages the parasympathetic, the rest digest part of the nervous system. So with that powerful blow, with that finely ground ash, it can be very grounding, centering. There's sometimes maybe some purging that can happen for me. And that's how I use it, is to kind of move and purge energy if I can, maybe even a cry, or, it just purging looks different for everybody. In any one of these settings, laughing. I have a guy, a very close friend, he belches. That's the way that he purges, and like, okay, that's just what it is. Yeah, just get it out. Just move the energy. That's what these medicines are trying to teach us, how to move the energies that these energies are getting stuck. They're getting stuck in our body. They're getting stuck in our energetic field, and it's bogging us down, making us heavy, tired, lethargic. That's where we're battling symptoms of depression, anxiety, because our energy field is really kind of congested and bogged down.
Okay, so anybody experiencing any of that stuff you just mentioned could benefit from a hape session.
From building a relationship with hape, coming in for hape ceremonies and circles, one-on-one hape sessions, especially if it really calls to you and it's your medicine, learning to eventually then self-serve, and you serve yourself your own hape. It's created a lot of like spiritual structure for me when I picked up my hape practice at the beginning of my psychedelic journey 5 years ago. That's the first medicine that I started mentoring with. It created structure, in that it forced me to sit down every morning and have meditation, get grounded and centered and prepared for my day. And then when I've had a tough, challenging day, or I'm going through a little bit extra in my life, I sit down with my hape, create that space for myself to clear, move, get grounded. That's when I can connect with spirit or my higher self and get more clarity in messages, especially if like I've got a lot going on in my mind. There's nothing there for at least a few minutes just for me to come back to me.
I was going to ask that too. Like, when you go through a session, how long are the effects of it? And like, are there any kind of side effects that somebody would need to be aware of?
Yeah, for the most population, it's about a 15 to 20 minute journey experience in like the receiving, the moving through the energy, blowing your nose, kind of going into maybe a deeper meditation. So 15, 20 minutes, but there is a very, very small population that can potentially have an adverse reaction to it. Certain medicines just aren't for everybody, and that goes for all of us when working with new medicines. Even herbs and things like that, we've got to give them a test and give them a try and make sure that there are no reactions. So sometimes it can actually decrease our blood pressure. So someone who might be dealing with like severe blood pressure issues might want to consider doing a smaller dose and creating a space. So if you do have a drop in blood pressure or an increase in blood pressure, maybe someone can drive you home, because you can get really hot and sweaty. You'll want to lay down. That's when making sure you show up hydrated is really important. So that's really kind of the worst of it, is maybe someone leaving with a bit of a headache and some nausea. That would be on the worst end of the spectrum. And that's probably maybe 10% of the population that comes through.
Okay. Okay. Not bad. How would you determine like what level of plant medicine someone might benefit from versus, when we talk about a Hape versus a psychedelic, with the psychedelic being a little more intense, I'm assuming, right? And we can talk about that a little bit more too. But, when somebody comes to see you and they're looking for help and you talk about using plant medicine, what are the determinants, I guess, on how which end of the spectrum to go on?
This is where maybe my work might separate me from a lot of other people. And I've been mentoring with a handful of medicines, healing with these medicines. And that has been, of course, as we mentioned, Hape, mushrooms, bufo, which is 5-MeO-DMT from the Sonoran toad, also wachuma, San Pedro, mescaline, and then grandmother ayahuasca. So these are the 5 medicines that I've been building a very deep and intimate relationship with the past 5 years. And from a clinical and indigenous perspective, that's where I start coming in with my assessment, and where people are coming in with what it is that they're trying to work on. What are their therapeutic goals? What are some of the shadow work that we can start tending to, like counseling and kind of like talk therapy or art? How can we start tapping into those unconscious places that we're operating from that keep us in these patterns of pain and suffering? Now, the medicine wants to show us what some of those patterns are. So part of the assessment is, has anybody ever worked with psychedelics before, even in a recreational way? And a lot of people have. Maybe they've shroomed, they've had mushrooms and went to a festival, and things like that, or in high school, college, there's a whole lot of experimenting that happens in college, right? So that's just part of the assessment too. Like, how familiar are you already with psychedelics, particularly plant medicines? And then what kind, like, and then this might go into like, what are some contraindications? So someone that might slow down the process of actually actively sitting in medicine would be someone who is on SSRIs, because there's some serotonin reuptakes that happen with things like psilocybin and DMT. And the DMT, of course, is found in ayahuasca and in the 5-MeO-DMT. So someone who is highly medicated with SSRIs, or anybody who has a serious heart condition, those stronger medicines like a strong dose of psilocybin, ayahuasca, or 5-MeO-DMT might not be right for them right now. But it doesn't mean there aren't ways for myself, and say, I also have a nurse practitioner that I work with who works around medications. We would work with her about, okay, how can we most harm reduce these medications? Does that mean kind of starting to titrate some of, especially the antidepressants, especially if that might even be a therapeutic goal? I want to get off antidepressants, and that's how a lot of people are walking in the door. It's just band-aiding. I feel numb, I'm not really myself. I want to get to the root of really what's making me sad, mad. Why can't I seem to break out of these patterns, like I said, that I already knew for myself, and I have a box full of tools, and I just wasn't able to break free, essentially. So as part of the assessment process, what's the family history like? Because also what's in consideration is psychosis, right? So a family history of schizophrenia or severe bipolar, anybody who would be in a manic state would definitely be a no. We don't want anybody getting stuck in that psychosis state. So those are like the heavy no-nos. And then it's just really kind of a broad spectrum from there, because really a lot of the research that's coming out, right, is it's really helping with PTSD, complex PTSD, depression, anxiety, end of life were one of the first researches with psilocybin, that people were just having more quality end of life by having a psilocybin journey, that they were feeling more whole and connected and not feeling so much fear around the end of life, because they understand now more of the cosmic universal flow of life that these medicines want to remind us and show us. So there's a full spectrum, and everybody kind of comes in a little bit differently, but that's where my guidance comes in as an indigenous plant guide. What is your history with medicine? What are some of your goals? If we just want to start dipping our toe in the psychedelic world, let's do some microdosing. Let's start off there. And or this is what I love. I serve 3 out of those medicines that I recommend, or that I mentor with, and one of them is Wachuma, and it's mescaline, and it's one of the more gentler psychedelics. It's not the big bang, all the colors and the the whatever it is that people associate with a really powerful psychedelic journey. Mescaline is very gentle, very light, including peyote. I just sat with her recently. Very heart-opening, compassionate. This medicine wants us to slow down and ground and work on presence and patience. And it's been great for like inner child work. So if someone comes in and they want to, that's what their focus is, an inner child. And I'm like, hey, I think grandfather's speaking to us. Now someone's coming in and they have some deeper layers that they really want to start getting to. Like, I'm done with this depression. I really want to start getting to the root of this. Then I would suggest let's start with psilocybin. If you want to do microdosing, we can start there now as we prep for a deeper dive. Come in, let's make sure you're building up your resources. Who do you have for counseling? Who do you have as your support group? Because, this stuff is going to come up. Now, what are we going to do with it once it does? So it's almost like, as a clinician, I'm creating a treatment plan, essentially. We've got an assessment. We've got a treatment plan. What are your goals? Now, what are some of the treatments that we're going to do? And then we're setting up an intention for an actual deep dive ceremony where we're going to go into those deeper places and really kind of start clearing out some of that energetic ancestral debris.
I love that. I love that you have the clinical counseling perspective to support somebody through the entire journey, from the beginning when you first meet them to the actual treatment, and then afterwards, and helping them work through whatever it is that comes up during the session.
Absolutely. And again, I think that's what makes me a little bit different from a lot of other practitioners that are serving medicine. Sometimes they're just serving the medicine. They're not even going through your medical or family history. They just tell you where to show up and bring the money. That's scary. And then the most important part to plant medicine is actually post-integration. Now that we've had these awarenesses, now that we've had this experience, what are we going to do about it? Because we can go back to the old ways. We don't have to make changes if we don't want to. We don't have to. But we came in with some goals, and I'm going to be a part of that accountability team. And this is part of the initiative for the Medicine Way. It's to build this community of actual integration, that when you're a part of the Medicine Way, in some level or some way, each member is really doing some deep work. And it's probably with medicine. And you can build more of, I think, an intimate relationship, talking about some of those really deeper, harder things that come up. And that's part of the resources. That's part of the culture that actually is already a part of these indigenous communities where the medicine comes from. Integration is a natural part of that community, because when we're in that community, we know who's going through healing. The community already knows so-and-so's out of balance. We need to walk more reverently. We need to be more mindful. We are showing them more love and compassion because they're going through a healing and integration. But out in this Western world, we don't know who's going through what. And then even the way we treat each other out in public, So, that's really part of the intention for the Medicine Way, is to know that this can be a safe place for those that are going through some deep, big stuff.
I love that. Very good work that you're doing. What are some misconceptions about psychedelics that you may encounter most often?
I feel like one of the parts of education around plant medicines, and I feel like it's an ongoing conversation, is this whole war on drugs phenomenon. That there's a really misperception around these plants that Mother Earth has created for us. in that our ancestors, all of us globally, all around the world, we can all go back to our ancestry, and we're finding archaeological evidence of mushrooms being a part of these ancient cultures and civilizations.
Okay.
India, Siberia, down in the Amazon, all through these ancient civilizations, you're finding mushrooms. Even in Neanderthals, or not Neanderthals, certain pouches have been found where I was just watching a documentary, and they were finding remnants of mushrooms in their pouch.
Pouches.
From a few 100,000 years ago.
Wow.
So this medicine is ancient, it's old. It's actually what might be the missing link and how we became humans from ape-like.
Really?
That's one of the theories out there, that we started eating mushrooms, and that's when our forebrain actually started to grow. And all this thinking and planning started to happen. Bipedalism.
Interesting to look up.
Yeah. So for me, I just want to educate people that these aren't drugs. These are medicines. And for me, drugs come from the pharmacy.
Right.
Drugs come from man-made manipulation of what were at one time probably a plant.
Right.
And then they synthesized it into a so-called medicine. And that's part of where this movement makes me a little nervous too, is I want to decriminalize the medicine. I don't want us to get in trouble for handling these medicines and using them in a sacred and reverent way. But what I get concerned about is the whitewashing of this medicine, and even distilling it down to just psilocin, and we're popping a psilocin pill, and we're missing a lot other components of what that medicine is trying to offer us.
Right. That makes sense, because it's, even just like, eating a piece of fruit, if you're eating it whole, you're getting the benefit of the whole fruit.
That's right.
Versus, juicing
right.
it.
Yes, it's usually the peeling of the fruit that has most of the nutrient value in it, right? And if you're just going to eat the center part, you're actually missing most of the nutrients.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any safety considerations that people should know about before exploring psychedelics? So can you give us maybe a walkthrough of what a typical session would look like the process? How long does it last? Where does it take place? And then what do we kind of talked about this at the afterwards, how are you sending them home afterwards?
Gosh, that can really go into a couple different ways. Because really what we're talking about is what in this field we would call set and setting. And anybody who's journeying by themselves, there would be a certain protocol of a set and setting if you're just going to journey by yourself. And then I have a certain protocol as a ceremonialist, as the medicine carrier, that I've been trained to hold a sacred and safe container for about 4 to 5, 6 people, just again for harm reduction. When I was mentoring, I was sitting with about 15 to 30 people at a time. And there's a lot higher potential for harm in that rate. So this is where I want to educate people on who you're choosing to sit with. How big are your groups? How many medicine people are going to be there holding space per participant per se? So this is where harm reduction comes in, and knowing, and even the training of your medicine people. How long have they been working with their medicines? I am a huge advocate of healers need to heal. Are they still healing with their own mentors and their medicine work? So
when you do a ceremony like this, it's not just you. You have other people who have been trained to, go through the process and know what they're doing and what to look for in helping.
Yeah, actually, right now I've been establishing an apprenticeship program. I don't have anyone that I consider an equal at this point, other than the nurse practitioner that I've been working with, and her and I have been hosting psychedelic one-on-one classes together, actually here at Sojo. And she's definitely a powerful medicine woman in her own right. But, it's just me right now. And this is why I'm really starting to gear up for an apprenticeship program where those that are interested in starting to mentor with medicines, I don't take it lightly. Depending on the medicine, it could be 1 to 2 years of an apprenticeship, at least on the front end, to actually start serving the medicine in ceremony. So for me, when I offer ceremonial services with plant medicines, it's either as in an individual setting, one-on-one, or a group setting where it's 4 to 6 people.
Okay.
And I
Smart.
hold like a tight ceremony, some would say. There's not a lot of playing around. It's not recreational in any means. Everybody is on their own sacred mat, minding their own sacred business. You know, there's no touching, there's no talking. Everybody is doing their own individual work. I come to each person as I see, like, maybe they're struggling. I feel some blocks, some energy needs to be moved. This is where I come in as a shaman, and I do like hands-on or energy work. Maybe a message is coming through and we need to talk something through. So this is where the shamanic component comes in of the ceremony work that I do. And that's why the groups are small, because everyone needs a little bit of one-on-one hands-on time. And my mushroom journey looks way different than my Wachuma, my San Pedro journey. That's out in nature. I hold that out in nature because part of that medicine is actually working with Mother Earth and Father Sky. That's a lot of where the wisdom comes through on that medicine. 5-MeO DMT. I love to work with that medicine out in nature too, but that's okay indoors as well. So depending on the medicine, each ceremony might look a little bit differently. But for me as a ceremonialist, you'll know it's pretty regimented in like an opening and an ending. Like these are portals, energetic portals that we're opening, and they need to be used with a lot of reverence and respect, which is part of why I also kind of discourage people from doing a lot of home self-dosing, especially large dosing, because there's things that can come up, there's things that can come through. Sometimes these energetic portals don't close, and that's where I've seen people get stuck in psychosis.
Really?
Yeah.
So it's very important to have somebody trained.
Yeah, it would be really helpful at the beginning of your journey. And then as you
Yeah.
get familiar with these medicines, then you can go home and sit with them and build a personal relationship with them. But get a little bit of training, or, you know, learn about dosing and different types of ways that we can dose and stuff like that, just to create that.
Do you host classes, like workshops that are just informational for people to learn more about, you know, what it is before they get into it, or even how to start building that relationship?
You know, that's why my friend Carrie and I have started doing the psychedelic 101s. We've done 101 where we talked about 6 different medicines. And then here next month, we're going to focus on 2 medicines particularly, so we can do a little bit more of a deeper dive for each one of those medicines and what that might look like in your own personal setting or in more of a ceremonial context, group setting.
Okay, awesome. I'm sure there's so much more that we could unpack on this topic. As you said in the very beginning, you could go on and on. But if somebody is interested in learning more or experiencing plant medicine, such as Hape or psychedelics, what would you recommend as a starting point for them?
Starting points, one, I really like to recommend movies. How to Change Your Mind is on Netflix. It's a 5-part series. And just kind of, I don't have any other names offhand, but if you just Google in, you know, psychedelic movies, there's at least 2 or 3 other great psychedelic movies, especially with like Paul Stamets, where they're really educating on you about mycelium and how mushrooms grow and how they're just pivotal, or it's so important for our actual environment, our ecology. So they're very educational, informative, and fun. That's really a place that I like a lot of people to start, is just watching some videos. And then coming in for a consultation, coming to any one of our psychedelic 101s.
If there's somebody that's maybe not here local that's interested, do you have any tips on how to find somebody in their area?
I do, yeah. If you're not here in the Phoenix area, a lot of ways that people are finding us is check to see if you have a local psychedelic society in your community. They're popping up all over the place. So Google a psychedelic society. We've got a few here in the Arizona area, so that's a good place to start.
That was a thing, so there you go. Very good. Okay. Well, thank you so much again for coming on the show today and helping us learn a little bit more about the fascinating world of plant medicine. Is there anything else that you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Gosh, no, I feel so grateful in this opportunity. Thank you all for taking the time to listen. And I'm just honored to be of service. And my work would not be possible without community.
Right.
So thank you for the community that you offer here at Sojo. It's been such a
Absolutely.
great blessing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, tell us how people can find you, your website, if you're on social media, and I can also put those in the notes so people can see it written out as well.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, our website is medicineway.org. Instagram is the.medicine.way. And what other ways can you find me? I also have one meetup site, and it's called Southwest Psychedelic Society here in the Phoenix area, and that's where I post a lot of the psychedelic classes that we offer and
Okay.
free group integration sessions. We've been doing free yoga here on
Right.
Sundays for the community.
Mhm.
So a lot of what I try to offer is free. That's the initiative with the Medicine Way as a nonprofit,
Right.
is really just to be able to afford anyone to be able to afford to come and receive some type of services.
Right. I love that. Well,
Mhm.
thank you so much for being part of our community here and offering all your great services as well. And thank you to our listeners today for tuning in to our episode of Holistic Health Explained. I am your host, Shantae. Be well, my friends.